Have you ever felt like you gave your whole life to something, only to realize it never really cared about you? Ever woken up one morning and understood that everything you built could disappear with a single phone call? Maybe you're at that point right now, working hard, making sacrifices, believing that stability will last forever. But what if I told you that the security you're protecting so fiercely might be the very thing holding you back from truly living? This is the story of a man who seemed to have it all at 52 years old. A respected position, a paycheck that covered the bills, a predictable routine he mistook for peace. On an ordinary Friday, he lost all of it in just 15 minutes. 1 year later, he was sleeping under a bridge, wearing the same clothes for weeks, unsure if the next day would even be worth it. What happened on that bridge didn't just change his life, it changed how he understood what it really means to live. Stay with me until the end, because this story might be exactly what you need to hear right now. It doesn't matter if you're at the top or at rock bottom. It doesn't matter if you're 25 or 55. What this man discovered on that bridge applies to anyone who's ever wondered if there's more to life than just surviving. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that the darkest moment of your life is exactly where the light was waiting for you. In an industrial city in the state of Ohio, there lived a man named Robert. At 52, he was an administrative manager at an auto parts factory in Detroit. 31 years in the same place. He started as an office assistant at 21, climbing the ladder step by step with patience and obedience. He never missed a day, never complained, never asked for a raise. Robert believed loyalty was the most valuable currency in the world, and that one day the company would recognize it. His life was a straight line. He woke up at 5:45 a.m., drank black coffee with no sugar, put on one of the 7 dress shirts he rotated during the week, took the same highway at 6:20, arrived at the factory at exactly 7, worked until 6 p.m., drove home, ate dinner while watching the news, went to bed at 10. The next day, he did it all again. On weekends, he mowed the lawn, washed the car, and watched football. He didn't call it happiness, he called it security. His wife, Martha, had left 8 years earlier. Not for another man, but out of exhaustion. On the night she packed her bags, she told him that living with Robert felt like living with a piece of furniture, present but lifeless. He had 2 grown children who rarely called. When they did, the conversations lasted less than 3 minutes. Robert told himself this was just how men of his generation were, silent providers, invisible pillars. He didn't need affection, he needed stability. On a Friday in March, Robert was called into the director's office. He assumed it was about the quarterly report. Inside were the director, the HR manager, and a lawyer he had never seen before. A folder sat on the table. The director didn't meet his eyes. The company is restructuring. Your position has been eliminated. Here is your severance agreement. You have until Monday to sign. Robert stood there. 31 years, 7 dress shirts, the same highway at 6:20, and in 15 minutes all of it was over. He signed the agreement that same day, not because he agreed, but because he didn't know what else to do. He went home carrying a cardboard box with his belongings, a coffee mug, a picture frame with a photo of his kids when they were still young, and an Employee of the Month certificate from 1996. He set the box in the corner of the living room and sat on the couch. He stayed there until it got dark, without turning on the lights, without eating, without crying. Just trying to understand how 3 decades could fit into such a small box. In the first few months, Robert tried to rebuild. He updated his resume, sent it to dozens of companies, but at 52, with experience at only 1 company, he was invisible. Too young to retire, too old to hire. The savings he thought would last for years disappeared in months. First went the car, then the furniture, finally the apartment. He called his children asking for help. The oldest said he was struggling too. The youngest didn't answer. 1 year and 2 months after being laid off, Robert carried everything he owned in a worn-out backpack. He slept in shelters when there was space, in alleys when there wasn't. He learned that hunger has stages. First, it hurts, then it burns, then you stop feeling it at all. He was deep in that exhaustion when he found the bridge, an old concrete structure over the Cuyahoga River on the outskirts of Cleveland. Under it were pieces of cardboard, torn blankets, and silence. Robert looked at the dark water and felt completely empty, worn down by everything he had lost, unsure how much longer he could keep going, but still standing there, breathing and present. Robert walked to the middle of the bridge. The November wind cut across his face. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from something he couldn't put a name to. He rested his arms on the concrete railing and looked down. The water was black, almost invisible in the darkness. He thought about Martha, about the children who never answered the phone, about the 31 years that now felt like they had never really existed. He told himself no one would miss him, that the world would keep turning exactly the same way the next morning. That's when he heard a voice behind him. "This won't fix anything, you know." Robert didn't turn right away. "The water's freezing. You'll suffer before anything changes." Robert turned around. Sitting on the ground, leaning against a concrete pillar, was a man in his mid-60s, grey beard, dirty clothes, a thin blanket over his shoulders. But his eyes were calm, almost peaceful. Robert didn't answer and looked back at the water. The man kept talking. "I stood in this exact spot once, about 6 years ago. Same bridge, same railing, same thoughts." Robert slowly turned his head. "You?" The man nodded. "My name's Samuel. I used to own 3 car dealerships in Columbus. Big house, beautiful wife, 2 kids in expensive colleges. I thought I had won at life." Robert lowered his arms from the railing and stood there listening. Samuel continued. "In 2008, when the market collapsed, I lost everything in 8 months. The dealerships closed. The bank took the house. My wife left and took the boys. I was 56 years old and suddenly I was nobody." Samuel paused, looking at the river. His voice stayed calm, without bitterness. "I spent 2 years on the streets. Drank too much. Came close to the edge more times than I like to admit. Until one night, right here on this bridge, I felt like I was done. Completely empty." Robert swallowed hard. "So what stopped you?" Samuel smiled faintly. "A dog." Robert frowned, confused. Samuel explained. "A skinny stray showed up out of nowhere. Sat next to me and just stared. Didn't bark, didn't beg for food. Just stayed there, looking at me like he was waiting for something. And I thought, if this dog is waiting for something from me, maybe I still have something to give." Robert sat down on the ground, a few feet away from Samuel. The concrete was freezing, but he didn't care. Samuel went on. "That night I left the bridge and took the dog with me. I named him Bridge, because he became my bridge back to life." Robert stayed quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, almost in a whisper, "And now? You're still out here?" Samuel nodded. "I am, but not the same way." Robert didn't understand. "What do you mean?" Samuel adjusted the blanket around his shoulders. "You know what I learned all these years, Robert. I spent my whole life building things that could be taken from me. Money, titles, houses, status, all of that can disappear overnight. But there's one thing no one can take." He tapped his chest. "Who you are inside, what you do for others, the purpose you carry." Robert felt something shift in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Samuel continued, "Now I volunteer at a shelter nearby. I help people who are where I once was. I don't make money, but I gain something I never had when I was rich. I wake up every day knowing why I'm alive." Robert looked at the river again, but this time he didn't think about disappearing. He thought about how long he had lived on autopilot. 31 years doing the same thing, going back to the same empty home, never once asking himself if that was living or just surviving. Samuel slowly stood up and held out his hand. "Come with me. The shelter serves hot soup at 10. You look like you could use some." Robert hesitated. Then he took his hand. Samuel's hand was rough, full of calluses, but steady. Steady like the hand of someone who knows exactly where he's standing. That night, Robert had his first hot bowl of soup in weeks. The shelter was small, a converted warehouse with plastic tables and peeling walls. But there was warmth, there were faces, there were people who looked him in the eye and said good evening. Samuel sat beside him and didn't say a word. He just ate his soup in silence, as if he knew that some pain needs space, not words. When they finished, Robert asked softly, "Why did you help me? You don't even know me." Samuel smiled. "Because someone helped me once, and the only way to repay that is to pass it on." Robert slept at the shelter that night. The next morning, he woke up before sunrise. Old habit. But for the first time in months, waking up didn't hurt. He found Samuel already awake, folding blankets. Samuel looked at him and said, "If you want, you can help me today. I can't pay you, but you'll get breakfast and lunch, and maybe you'll learn something it took me years to figure out." Robert asked, "What?" Samuel answered as he folded another blanket. "You don't find purpose by thinking. You find it by doing." That day, Robert helped serve coffee, sweep the floor, and organize donations. Simple work. Work he would have considered beneath him a year earlier. But as he handed a plate of food to a younger man who was shaking from the cold, something happened. The man looked at him and said, "Thank you, sir. Really. Thank you." And Robert felt it. He felt that he existed. He felt that his presence had made a difference to someone. He felt something that 31 years of reports and meetings had never given him. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Robert stayed at the shelter, first as a volunteer, then as an informal coordinator. He realized he knew how to organize things, make spreadsheets, manage supplies, the same skills the factory said it no longer needed. But now, those skills were feeding people. Now they mattered. A local pastor noticed his work and offered him a small salary to officially manage the shelter. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rent a room and buy clean clothes. 1 year after meeting Samuel on the bridge, Robert stood in the same spot again. This time, he wasn't looking at the water. He was looking at the city. The sun was rising over Cleveland, painting the sky orange and pink. Samuel stood beside him with Bridge, the old stray dog, lying at their feet. Robert said, without taking his eyes off the horizon, "I spent my whole life thinking purpose was something you found in your job, your paycheck, your title." Samuel nodded. "And what do you think now?" Robert took a deep breath. "Now I think purpose is what's left when all of that is taken away. It's what you do when you have nothing left to prove to anyone." My friend, Robert's story is a story about loss, but it's not a sad story. It's a story about what happens when life takes everything from you and forces you to discover who you really are. Robert spent 31 years building an identity based on external things: title, salary, routine, stability. When all of that disappeared, he thought he had lost himself. But the truth is, he had never actually found himself. Maybe you're in a similar place right now. Maybe you feel like you're working hard, but don't know what for. Maybe you're afraid of losing what you've built. Or maybe you've already lost it, and you're wondering if it's worth going on. I want to tell you something. Hitting rock bottom isn't the end. It's the moment you stop digging in the wrong direction. It's the place where you finally look up and decide what kind of life you want to build from here on. If this story touched you in any way, hit the like button now. That simple action helps this message reach more people when they need it most. Leave a comment telling us which part impacted you the most. And if you know someone who's going through a hard time, share this video with them. Sometimes a story is all someone needs to remember that there's still hope. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this every week. And remember, no matter where you are right now, what matters is the direction you choose from today on. The bridge doesn't have to be the end. It can be exactly where your beginning starts.